son.
Dad?
I wear 'em front. I wear 'em back. I
go
go inside
inside
out. Then I go
front and back. Dad!
We have a lot to talk about.
Dude, what about that one scene Stan Lee did? Right? Which is complete randomness about Stan Lee because we're trying to come up with the episode, and then I'll cut in the clip.
Are you talking about the one where he's in freaking in space with the aliens and he's like, hey, I got this story about when I was a FedEx guy. And there was actually a scene where he was a FedEx guy.
Uh-huh. That was a good scene.
He's like,
I
got a whole bunch more to tell you guys. I thought you were my lift home.
Wasn't that when he was an alien or related to the Watchers? What was it?
No, he was in an astronaut, like a U.S. NASA suit. And he was sitting up there with the Watchers.
Right.
And he goes,
yes.
And then I was a FedEx guy, and nobody freaking...
Wasn't there a theory that he might be...
Yeah, it's actually been confirmed by Feige that he's a Watcher.
That's what I thought. You know what? Crazy thing, guys. I thought, you know what we should do? This is what we should do for Stanley. This is what I'm thinking right now.
Hey, you noisy kids, keep it down. You wouldn't want me to get angry, would you?
Oh. Yeah.
Yickety do. Yickety da. Ping pong.
Definitely make it time to go into the episode.
Guys, let's do the episode.
Welcome to the Nerdentials podcast, starring your hosts, Joe Tweedy, Matthew Johnson, Nick Thomas, and Lynn Dudgeon.
Well, here we are, guys. I guess it's only fitting that we should be put in our places by the legend himself. Let's open up the show. Welcome to Nerdentials. Usually your weekly dose of the nerdy essentials covering film, TV, video games, and comic books. But today is a special occasion. And comic books are indeed involved. Guys, I welcome you to a special edition of Nerdentials where we are going to pay tribute to the legend himself, the marvelous, infinite multiverse creator himself, the great Stan Lee. But just a real quick introduction. I'm Joe Tweeton, and the hosts joining me tonight are the Nick Thomas, the Lynn Dudgeon, and in this corner, the Matt Johnson. Gentlemen, here we are.
Unfortunately, I haven't been so dry this week. I've been a little bit teary-eyed.
Long listeners of the podcast, you know the reference.
Yes.
So, guys, here we are today. It's a time of... It's a combination of sadness and celebration. Because today, less than a week ago, I posted a quick little PSA on our channel to let you guys know as the whole world discovered that the man, the myth, the legend himself, at age 95, the great Stan Lee, passed away. We're about to dive into a Nerdentials tribute to Stan Lee. And if you guys hadn't noticed, if you're on the YouTube channel right now, we're all sporting, guys, pull back from your camera a little bit. We're all sporting a classic Marvel t-shirt to represent the legend himself and all that he's done. So the way things were going to go today, guys, we are going to each give a quick, let's be honest, it's not going to be quick, but we're all going to give our own personal testimony.
There's no quickies here.
No quickies here. That's right, Matthew.
Gotta apologize if it gets heavy.
There will be some weight involved. And to go with that weight, it's going to be a testimony from each of us about what we love about Stan Lee and what he has done as a grand creator of fantasy and imagination, and how he affected us personally in our lives. Then, just to give you guys a quick little glimpse into the latter half of the episode, we are going to dive into the awesome and sometimes hilarious cameos that the great Stan Lee himself found himself within the greater MCU. And we'll cover a little bit of the history about all his visual cameos in all these different movies, films, and whatnot. So, guys, that being said, let's start our testimonies off with, I don't know if you guys want to draw straws or if one of you feels super led to start this off.
Well, hold on. Let me get a piece of paper and a pen. It's going to take me a little while to draw a straw. Let's be honest. If we're doing like comic book quality straws, it's going to take me a little while.
Yes, and if you're going to draw one at the level that Stan Lee drew, or at least, or even wrote about, it's going to be a minute. That being said,
I actually would say I nominate the comic book guru of our group to go first.
So let's ask him first, because this is super heavy. Nick, would you like to go first or last based on your experience being the comic guru of our group?
I can go first.
All right, guys. Quick PSA to all you listeners and viewers. This shit is about to get heavy. Nick wanted to bring the heat first, so
Joe knows because we've talked about it.
I'm joking, but also serious. In the description of this show, if you guys read it before we started, it's going to imply that there are weighty, emotional aspects to this episode. All right, Nicholas.
There may be tears.
It's about to get real.
I'm going to let you kick things off. Personal testimony. I don't want to... No, man. Like right now I'm full of energy because we're together as a group, but during that PSA, things got heavy emotionally. So we're going to see how things go. I'm just going to let you talk, Nick. Go ahead.
I can honestly say that comic books saved my life. And Stan Lee had a gigantic part in that. I don't talk about it very often, but I had a really messed up childhood. Had a lot of bad crap happen. And one of the few things that helped me get through it was the imaginative, creative universe, multiverse that Mr. Stan Lee himself created. It gave me strength and hope knowing that someone could think up of a world where someone had these superpowers that would save people from the exact things I was going through. He actually inspired me to write. I've actually shared some of my writings with Joe here. And a lot of those writings were just, I kind of along the lines, same way he did, created a superhero to answer problems I was going through. And I wouldn't have done that without some of the documentaries and stuff that I've seen from Stan Lee himself. But the man showed a lot of love and care, and his biggest thing was respect for everyone. And that was the thing about his characters. They were real. They were more real than other characters in the past. They had flaws. They had issues. They had backstories that were just heart crushing. Like I said, he was big on respect. I actually have a poem that Stanley wrote. Do you guys mind if I read it?
No, absolutely. That you sent it to me earlier today. I love this poem. So go ahead, Nick.
It's titled Respect. When God made man, he went all out, as far as we can tell. He made some black, he made some white, and other shades as well. He placed them on the verdant earth to live and love and thrive. He favored none, he loved each one, and kept that love alive. Now the Lord's perplexed and growing vexed at those who'd Mars plan. Instead of love, some practice hate, a practice we must ban. We all must share this tiny sphere on which we live and die. Respect for all in every way should be our battle cry. It's not too late to initiate friendship between the races, so let's heed the call of the Lord of all with the love that he embraces.
Those are some heavy words coming out of Stanley.
One of the only true superheroes that I can actually think of in this world has actually left us. And he had the coolest power of all. Power to supply hope and imagination.
Hear, hear.
Dang it, Nick. Those are concluding statements.
Well, it was including my feelings on it.
But he can.
No. I'm joking. I wouldn't take that away.
Let's finish the episode there. We're good.
Yeah. Powerful enough.
And on that note, I'm out.
Bye-bye. No, okay. That was deep, Nick. All right. I don't know if I should have put you first or last. Okay, anyway, sorry. Okay, sorry. No, that was awesome, Nick. Incredible testimony, how it personally affected you. Let's continue this shindig around the table. Matthew, I want to throw it over to you. Give us your little personal experience.
So, it's not as deep as Nick's goes. I can honestly say that Stanley didn't save my life. However, pretty much gave me a life. I've always been a nerd. I started out very young as being a nerd. And growing up, I was always in the background with things. Like, not a lot of people like to talk to me, so I kept to myself. Definitely read a comic book here and there, not too many to begin with. I was more into video games at the time. However, when I came across Spider-Man, it kind of gave me a lift as to a nerd is a cool person kind of a thing. Like, Spider-Man's persona was the geeky kid that was in the background that the cool kids beat up or whatever, and then all of a sudden he got bit by the radioactive spider and became Spider-Man, and that kind of gave me a push forward to actually kind of come out of my shell. I didn't come out of my shell until I was a freshman in high school, fully, until I started drama class, and one of my monologues that I did was from Spider-Man. So I'd like to say that Deadpool is my persona. To be honest, Spider-Man's probably my favorite Marvel character, and it'll probably be for all the time. Even though I do like tacos and chimichangas.
Heck yeah.
But it's in when we got the news that he died, like, I couldn't believe it at first. Like, I had to look it up on different news outlets to make sure that it wasn't one of those fake this person died, like freaking, I don't know, George Foreman or something, because that came up. And, so it just, my heart sank, not only for myself, but for comic book nerds all around the world, for everybody around the world that watched all the movies, that had some sort of connection with their mom or dad when they went to see these movies or read the comic books together, kind of a thing. Like, it hit hard. And one of the main things of Spider-Man I cherish the most is, with great powers come great responsibility. The truest words out there that I have, to this day, will always have in the back of my head. So
You can conclude with, and that's my story.
and that's all I have to say about that. I'll do a Forrest Gump impersonation.
Matthew, you were wrong. It's the level of depth does not imply the specific impact. Nick had a specific impact, and it acquired a level of depth that affected him personally, and you had a specific encounter with the great man himself and his creations, and that created its own depth within you. You could even say the redheaded beard depth. For all you YouTubers out there watching, the man's beard is epic. I'm talking about Matthew. Anyway.
I need to trim the mustache though, because it's getting kind of.
That's fine. That's fine. Don't get rid of this. This is so epic right now. Anyway.
Nope.
All right. Passing the torch off to you, sir. Lynn, go ahead and give us your personal journey.
So, I got to start off by saying, like Matt, when I first heard about it, I was at work, and I could not believe it, because I figured that that guy would outlive me, to be honest. And then the thing that really instilled it into me was when my mom started messaging me and saying that he had passed. And I was like, man, it's for real. It's for real. And then she sent me a video, like, from him, of inspiration to, kind of live your life. And it's always kind of how I've lived my life. And it's just one of those things where it's tolerance, and knowing that we all come from similar backgrounds and the same if not similar creator, and you kind of have to have understanding of those around you. And it's, in the video, he says that we have to have a tolerance for all, and tolerance for the people that you might not look towards, because you never know, they might be the superhero that saves you one day. And it's, I don't know, I feel like I've taken the opportunity several times in my life to help others. And not one of those things that I'll ever stop. I will always give, the shirt off my back if somebody's cold. And he says that you need to not lead life based on color, skin, or race, being the same thing, but it's just one of those things where you kind of have to have understanding for everyone, because you don't know who'd be the one to help you or who'd be the one to save you. And he also preached that you need to understand that you have the ability to create everything. You have the ability to have an infinite imagination. You're the only one that limits yourself. And to limit yourself, you really stifle yourself. And I don't know. I've seen that in my life, that I'm the one who really holds myself back. And to hold yourself back is to limit yourself. And you can't really limit yourself, because who's the one to tell you can't do it? It's you. I mean, you can always do it. I mean, you can always learn a new skill. You can learn the ability to do something new, but the one person to stop you is you. And I mean, I've always felt that I can always learn something new. I can always be better. I can always do it. And the one thing you need to do is put your big boy pants on at the end of the day and just do it. Whether they are front or back or inside out or front and back again. Damn it.
Sorry. Pause for a second. It's okay. Damn it, Lynn. Go ahead, dude. Sorry. I know you were trying to lighten the moment for a second.
You're good. But it's you're the only one that's going to hold yourself back. You can't listen to what others tell you. You can do it. And that's what he really, the thing that my mom showed me in that video was that I've proven that I can do it. And I'm, I have no skill in anything that I do, but I've always learned it. Mm-hmm. And with the ability to learn, your imagination, and the ability to think outside the box and just do it, you can do it. And, it just...
Don't take this out of context. But, right now, I wish we weren't on Skype. I wish that I was right there next to you so I could give you a hug right now.
Speaking of people that need hugs.
And the thing that really got me into Stan and Marvel was when Dad first got me what was it? It was a first edition when they first introduced Green Goblin into the scene, and that was my thing right there. And his thing was that the Green Goblin, he saw something that was holding him back, and he thought outside the box. Although he did become a villain, but he saw that he could, he rose against. And, I mean, he had a good cause in mind, but it was ultimately a bad idea. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing is my dad was always one of those guys that said that you kind of needed to remove impossible from your vocabulary, because nothing's impossible. It's going to be you at the end of the day that stops you from doing it.
Absolutely, man.
That's kind of my stand thing.
That's the Stan spiel.
Hey, Joe, do you mind rolling that clip that I was talking about that Nick sent me earlier, and the one that my mom sent too?
Absolutely, man. All right, guys, real quick, here is the clip Lynn was talking about.
Hi, heroes. This is Stan Lee coming at you. Want you to know, Marvel has always been and always will be a reflection of the world right outside our window. That world may change and evolve, but the one thing that will never change is the way we tell our stories of heroism. Those stories have room for everyone, regardless of their race, gender, religion, or color of their skin. The only things we don't have room for are hatred, intolerance, and bigotry. That man next to you, he's your brother. That woman over there, she's your sister. And that kid walking by, hey, who knows? He may have the proportionate strength of a spider. We're all part of one big family, the human family, and we all come together in the body of Marvel. And you're part of that family. You're part of the Marvel universe that moves ever upward and onward to greater glory. In other words, Excelsior.
I'm not crying, you are.
I know. I
got
saw.
something
I
in my
saw
eye.
every one of us wiping a few tears away as Lynn was talking. All right. So that clip.
Joe, seems like it's you.
All right. That clip just happened. All right, guys. Here's what I got. I'll give you guys my initial thoughts to him and the news. It's one of those weird things. I deal with the passing of people in a very different way than some. And I know it's the stages of grief, and my first stage always seems to just be disbelief. It's always shock and disbelief, and then the following time after that, I'm just trying to piece together what the reality of it all is. And 10 a.m. that morning, last week, when we got the news, thing is I was watching my kids. My wife was at work. I was watching the kids. It was early morning. I was at home, sitting on my couch, just jamming to some music. I was surfing on my phone, and then the headline popped up. Stan Lee, 95, and that was, to be honest, I had not known how old he really was up to that point, because the legend didn't have a timestamp in my mind. And I found out he was 95 that morning, and that he had left us. And the reason that is so it was just like quiet shock initially for me. Because for years, every movie I've gone into and come out of with my wife when we're watching the Marvel movies, we see that classic cameo at the end of every movie. And it's not so much a joke as just a quick little quiet statement that my wife says to me, or I'll say to her, is I'm going to be really sad when I don't see these cameos anymore. And so it's interesting with the PSA announcement I made last week. I didn't really have as many tears or emotional tears in my head, but I think a lot of it's flooding out because we're kind of making this a little personal right now. So and so like I make it a joke sometimes, and it's kind of how I cope with grief, but it's true. I made that statement probably a few months ago with like the last movie I went and saw with my wife, which was Infinity War, and there's a Stan Lee cameo in there somewhere, and we made the statement. It's good, that's going to be crazy and sad when we don't see those cameos anymore. And the thing is Stan Lee affected me more heavily in my adult life than anything. I did not grow up as a little kid so much. I was aware of his creations. I knew about Spider-Man. X-Men was my jam in the 90s. And so I knew about his creations, but I didn't really know the man until I hit early adulthood. Even earlier than that, going into high school is when I kind of really, I knew who the guy was. And the biggest thing that affected me the most out of who Stan was is his ability to view the world as a child. And because his biggest passion was to bring the faith, the hope, the tolerance that our own little children are capable of, because we're not born evil, we're not born indifferent, we're not born angry towards one another. We're born innocent. When we are little children, we believe anything is possible, and anything someone shows us is possible. And that's what Stan Lee gave to us and gave to me. And that's what Stan Lee gave to the world, was the idea that anything is possible. And he lived that. He didn't just show it in his work. He lived it in his life. And just a side note to that, a funny little story I read in an article today about why he says the word excelsior. It's actually a Latin word that means always forwards and upwards, or onwards and forwards and ever upwards. And he adds to it. He adds his own flavor to it over the years that he's been using that. But the reason he picked the word excelsior to use is back in the early days, and he even published a comic book a few months ago, this year. Like, the guy worked until he died, literally. And from the very beginning, he was the editor for many different comic books at Marvel, and he always wrote an editor's note, like the letter at the end of the book from the editor. And he was for the longest time, he was trying to come up with a sign-off, like, here's Stan Lee coming at you, or, a handful of other cheesy one-liners. What's that? Enough said? Yeah, enough said. That's another one. And granted, at the time, it came out of a sense of competition. He said in an interview he was trying to come up with a sign-off phrase that was different from everyone else. He said, I want to pick a word that's hard to spell and that's hard to understand what it means, and that would be his sign-off. He wanted something unique to himself, and he picked a Latin word called excelsior, ever onwards and upwards. And the crazy thing about that is it was birthed out of the idea of I want to set myself apart from the competition, to actually living that out through the entirety of his life. For the better part of 60 plus years, 60 plus years, 70 plus years in the industry, when he finally came up with the word excelsior, for the majority of his life, he lived by that idea forever, onwards and upwards in glory, and just with the idea of bringing everyone under that umbrella. And and so for me, in my adult life, the more times I saw him at the end of movies, and the more comics I read and the interviews I saw, I got more and more attached to who he was as a person. And very much reminding me of being a grandfather to me in one respect, always giving that timely advice. And that's why when I heard that news that he had left us, I said and wrote in our PSA announcement about it that my 12-year-old brain pictured Stan Lee as being immortal, and I gotta make a correction. My 33-year-old brain thought the guy was immortal. And that being said, there aren't really any more words I can say without crying all over the internet right now. So, that being said, those were our testimonies. I want to kind of wrap up this tribute by each of us going kind of around the table and sharing our favorite cameo by the great Stan Lee in either an older movie or the MCU cameos. I'm open to any cameo you guys want to share that you've seen Stan in that you was your favorite. Since Nick started out the last round of conversations, I'm going to throw it over to Nick if you're ready for that.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite cameo would be what year was that? It was 2007 Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. It was Spider-Man 3. It was the worst out of the whole series, but it had my favorite cameo that he ever did. At the end of it, Peter Parker's standing there, and there's this marquee sign that has this message rolling across saying that Spider-Man's going to get the key to the city. And Stan Lee walks up and stands right beside him, looks at him, puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "Hey, it does look like one man can make a difference." And then he stops and says, "Enough said," and turns and walks away. And it was just, it was awesome.
Nice. Mix things up. Lynn, do you got one off the top of your head you want to share?
Like the big one would probably be when Stan looked like he was in his prime of Mallrats. When he walks up and he's like, "Hey, you checking out what's in the window?"
I saw that one. Yeah.
And then he turns over to him and he goes, "Oh, I know you." And then Stan goes, "Yeah, I'm Stan Lee." And then he shakes his hand and walks off.
And then he freaked out, realizing who it was.
But like my biggest thing was Stan's facial hair, and he had like these wicked mutton chops and just some. He looked like Bono from,
Yeah, yeah. All right, Matthew. Matthew, what's your favorite cameo of Stan Lee?
Well, mine goes back even further back than Spider-Man 3. It goes back to Fantastic Four, when he actually plays as a character he created, as in Willie Lumpkin, the mailman.
Oh, yes. That's an old one. That's a classic one right there.
It's a very old one. I also like the one from Daredevil, but Fantastic Four was probably my favorite.
Nice. Well, I guess that leaves me. My favorite cameo. I mean, there's a lot of great ones as far as like that have more weight to them as far as like meaning or theories in the universe. But one that was just kind of completely outlandish, completely just out there, is the first Deadpool movie with Ryan Reynolds, 2016, where he played as a DJ running the music sound at a strip club. And he's in the scene, he's announcing the next stripper to come up on stage, and he introduces her as Chastity. And it's just one of the more absurd roles, because it's Deadpool, and Deadpool itself is absurd in concept. So it made sense. It fit the movie having that kind of an outlandish cameo for him. His other cameos are typically inspirational or really short and comical, and this one was just kind of outlandish. What is Stan Lee doing in a strip club?
I just want to do one more that I actually thought of. It was impactful because it was the only one that ever had his wife in it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
X-Men Apocalypse. Both him and Joan were in it. When it looks like the whole world's just about to get destroyed, and all those things are coming down from the sky. You see them embracing each other, and that was relatively close to when, right before she passed away.
Oh wow!
So
I'm gonna have to recap that scene. I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we just kind of wanted to put something together in tribute to the legend himself. We just kind of thanks for indulging us and the time we spent kind of just putting a little bit of our hearts out there and just sharing our feelings, thoughts, and nostalgia for the king of comic books himself. This isn't going to be super long, guys. This is pretty much it. We're wrapping up now. Just personal testimonies, our favorite cameos we covered. I'm not going to do any housekeeping or social plugs. You guys know where to find us. I will put this out there, though. If you guys want, in traditional Marvel Cinematic fashion, we'll have some post-credit scenes for you guys to check out here in a second. So if you guys want to stick around, enjoy the B-reel of the great Stan Lee. Before I exit, guys have any additional statements you want to make? Send-off statements. Anything?
I have one thing. That was not it, but...
well, I'm still holding my breath. Go on.
Lynn mouthed the word. Yeah, never mind.
Go for it.
So, this was coming to my head like when I was talking. Stan Lee gave us superheroes that were based on people that he actually knew, everyday heroes. Every one of us has that ability to be an everyday hero. Keep it up.
Absolutely. And the clip that I played earlier, Stan Lee made that sentiment that Marvel is a reflection of the world around us in one of the interviews he made. And no, that's beautifully stated, Matthew. All right, guys. That being said, nerds in the for Matt, Nick, Lynn, and myself, in the great words of Stan Lee, Excelsior.
We're never on time. You shouldn't expect it to happen here.
Oh, I know.
Can you imagine a world without the Avengers? Can you imagine a world without Spider-Man? Can you imagine a world without the God of Thunder? Can you imagine a world without a guy named Stan? Can you imagine a world without Tony Stark? Can you imagine a world without his Iron Man? Can you imagine a world without Captain Marvel? Can you imagine a world without a guy named Stan? Stan Lee, there has to be a Stan Lee, or we would not be happy in this universe. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Stan Lee, there has to be a Stan Lee, or maybe 2 or 3 in the multiverse. Whoa, Can you imagine a world without Magneto? Can you imagine a world without Titanium Man? Can you imagine a world without the Human Torch? Can you imagine a world without a guy named Stan? What if there was no Fantastic Four? What if there was no Giant Man? What if there was no X-Men? What if there was no guy named Stan? Stan Lee, there has to be a Stan Lee, or we would not be happy in this universe. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Stan Lee, there has to be a Stan Lee, or maybe 2 or 3 in the multiverse. Whoa, oh, oh, oh. What would the heroes do without the villains? Hey! What would the heroes do without a plan? Hey! What would the heroes do without the sidekicks? Hey! What would the heroes do without a guy named Stan? Their creator is a marvel, a most fantastic man. And don't call him Mr. Lee, he's just a guy named Stan.